This isn't what it looks like. I can explain everything. We need to act quickly. There's no time to waste.
Janitor slept with Millionaire's CEO 3 months later. She showed up with pregnancy. What happened next shocked everyone. When a humble janitor spent one unexpected night with a billionaire CEO, no one could have predicted the storm that would follow. 3 months later, she returned, pregnant, and what happened next shattered the walls of the corporate empire. Before we begin the beautiful story, please click subscribe. It's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Benison Industries' executive floor had witnessed many secrets, but none quite like the one that would unravel on that cold November evening. Vivian Martinez had been invisible for 3 years, just another face pushing a mop cart through marble corridors where decisions worth millions were made daily. At 28, she'd perfected the art of being unseen, her dark eyes downcast, her cleaning uniform a shield against the world of privilege that surrounded her but never included her. She never imagined that one night would shatter that invisibility forever. It was the annual charity gala, the kind of event where champagne flowed like water and the city's elite congratulated themselves on their generosity. Vivian had been assigned to the late shift, cleaning up after the glittering crowd dispersed. But that night, she'd arrived early, slipping through the service entrance just as the event reached its crescendo. That's when she saw him. Alexander Benison stood alone on the terrace of the penthouse suite, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. At 35, he was everything the business magazine said he was: ruthless, brilliant, devastatingly handsome. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, his bow tie loosened, the only signs that the perfectly composed CEO had any humanity beneath the tailored armor. Vivian should have turned away, should have gone back to her cart, her mop, her safe invisibility. But something in his posture, a slump of exhaustion, a heaviness that money couldn't ease, made her pause. "The party's inside," she said softly, immediately regretting breaking the silence. He turned, and his steel-gray eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, not the practiced smile she'd seen in photographs, but something genuine, almost vulnerable. "I know," he replied, his voice carrying a warmth she hadn't expected. "That's exactly why I'm out here." What happened next would be the subject of whispered speculation for months to come. Two people from different worlds, united by loneliness and a moment of connection that defied logic. They talked, really talked, for hours. About dreams deferred, about the weight of expectations, about feeling trapped in lives that looked perfect from the outside. When he kissed her, it wasn't calculated or predatory. It was desperate, searching, human. And when she kissed him back, she wasn't thinking about consequences or mourning regrets. She was thinking that for once in her life, she wanted to be seen. The night that followed was tender and passionate, forbidden and inevitable. In the darkness of that executive suite, class distinctions melted away. There was no CEO and janitor, only Alexander and Vivian, two souls seeking comfort in each other's arms. When dawn broke over the city, reality returned with harsh clarity. Alexander had a board meeting. Vivian had floors to clean. They dressed in silence, the weight of their different worlds settling back onto their shoulders. "Vivian," he said as she reached for the door, his voice thick with something she couldn't identify. "It's okay," she interrupted, unable to bear whatever he was about to say. "It was just one night. We both needed something. Let's just leave it at that." He nodded slowly, though his eyes told a different story. "If you need anything." "I won't," she said firmly, and walked out of his life. Or so she thought. 3 months later, Vivian stood in the bathroom of her tiny apartment, staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the chipped porcelain sink. Her hands trembled as the reality crashed over her like a wave. She was pregnant with Alexander Benison's child, the CEO of a billion-dollar empire, a man who lived in a world so far removed from hers that they might as well be on different planets. For 2 weeks, she agonized over what to do. She could stay silent, raise the child alone, never disturb his carefully ordered life. Part of her wanted to do exactly that, to protect her pride, to avoid the inevitable rejection or, worse, the clinical transaction of child support payments and legal agreements. But another part of her, the part that had grown up without a father, who knew the ache of that absence, couldn't do that to her child. Every child deserved to know where they came from, even if the truth was complicated and painful. So on a Monday morning, 3 months and 2 weeks after that fateful night, Vivian did something she'd never done before. She walked through the front entrance of Benison Industries instead of the service entrance. She rode the elevator up to the executive floor instead of taking the stairs to the basement. And she asked to see Alexander Benison. The receptionist, a polished woman named Catherine with perfectly manicured nails and a smile sharp as glass, looked at her as if she'd asked to see the Pope. "Mr. Benison doesn't take walk-in appointments," Catherine said, her tone dripping with condescension. "If you're here about a cleaning position, human resources is on the 3rd floor. Vivian felt heat rise to her cheeks but held her ground. "I need to see Mr. Benison. It's personal." Catherine's eyebrows arched so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "Personal?" She looked Vivian up and down, taking in a second-hand coat, the worn shoes, the obvious signs of someone who didn't belong in this gleaming temple of wealth. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or I'll call security." "Call him," Vivian said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "Tell him Vivian Martinez is here. He'll see me." "Look, miss. Just tell him. Please." Something in Vivian's eyes must have convinced Catherine, because she picked up the phone with a heavy sigh, clearly expecting to have this delusional woman escorted out within minutes. "Mr. Benison, there's a woman here, a Vivian Martinez. She's insisting she has personal business with you." Catherine paused, listening, and her expression shifted from smug certainty to shocked confusion. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." She hung up slowly, looking at Vivian with new eyes that held questions and speculation. 68th floor. He'll see you now. The elevator ride felt eternal. Vivian watched the numbers climb, each one taking her closer to a conversation that would change everything. Her hand unconsciously moved to her still flat stomach, where a tiny life was growing, a secret that wouldn't stay secret much longer. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that screamed wealth and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city. Modern art that probably cost more than Vivian would earn in a lifetime hung on the walls. And there, behind a massive desk in a glass-walled office, was Alexander Benison. He stood when he saw her, his expression unreadable. He said something to his assistant, a young man who nodded and quickly left, closing the door behind him. They were alone. Vivian walked across the expanse of expensive carpet, feeling like she was approaching a throne. When she reached his office door, Alexander opened it himself. "Vivian," he said, and just the way he said her name, with recognition, with something that might have been relief, made her knees weak. "I'm sorry to just show up like this," she began, but he shook his head. "Don't apologize. Come in. Please." His office was even more intimidating than she'd imagined. Minimalist and modern, every surface gleaming, every object perfectly placed. She felt like a stain on the pristine perfection. "Can I get you something? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be good," she said, her mouth suddenly dry. He poured her a glass from a crystal decanter, and their fingers brushed as he handed it to her. The contact sent electricity through her, a reminder of the night that had brought her here. "You look good," he said, then immediately seemed to regret it. "I mean, how have you been?" "I've been." She took a breath. There was no easy way to say this. No gentle lead-in that would soften the blow. "I am pregnant, Alexander. The baby is yours." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. She watched emotions flicker across his face, shock, disbelief, calculation, and something else she couldn't quite name. He sank into his chair, ran a hand through his hair. Are you certain? About the paternity. The question stung, though she'd expected it. You're the only person I've been with in over 2 years. I'm certain. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on his desk. I'm not here to ask for anything, Vivian continued, needing to fill the silence. I just thought you had a right to know. I'm going to keep the baby, and I can raise it on my own. I don't expect you to. Stop, he said, holding up a hand. He stood, crossed to the window, his back to her. Just give me a moment to process this. Vivian waited, watching the rigid line of his shoulders, wondering what thoughts were racing through his mind. Was he calculating child support payments? Consulting with lawyers in his head? Planning how to make this problem disappear? When he finally turned back to her, his face was composed, but his eyes were storm-dark with emotion. I need to be clear about something, Vivian. That night, it wasn't just nothing to me. I've thought about you every day since, but I convinced myself it was better not to reach out, that our worlds were too different, that I'd only complicate your life. She hadn't expected this. Alexander. Let me finish. If you're carrying my child, then we need to figure this out together. But I need proof. Not because I don't trust you, but because... He gestured at the office around them. Because I'm in a position where people try to take advantage. I need to protect myself, and more importantly, I need to protect you and the baby from accusations down the road. It was reasonable, logical, everything she should have expected from a businessman of his caliber. So why did it hurt so much? Of course, she said stiffly. I'll take whatever tests you need. After that, if the child is mine, when the child is proven to be mine, he corrected, we'll need to make arrangements. Financial support, obviously. And I want to be involved, Vivian. I won't be an absent father. Involved how? She asked warily. I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. He paused, studying her face. How far along are you? Almost 14 weeks. And you've seen a doctor? Everything is okay. The concern in his voice surprised her. I've been to a clinic. Everything looks normal so far. He nodded, then did something unexpected. He crossed to her, knelt down so they were eye level, and placed his hand gently on her arm. I know this isn't how either of us imagined this happening, he said softly. But we are going to figure it out. Whatever you need, better medical care, help with expenses, anything, you come to me. Understood. Tears pricked at Vivian's eyes. She'd been braced for rejection or cold transactions, not this gentle concern. Okay, she whispered. Give your contact information to my assistant. I'll have my doctor call you to schedule the paternity test. It's non-invasive, just a blood draw from you, simple and safe for the baby. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Vivian, he said as she turned to leave. Thank you. For coming here. For telling me. It couldn't have been easy. I almost didn't, she admitted. I'm glad you did. As Vivian left his office, passing the curious stares of assistants and executives, she felt the weight of what she'd just set in motion. Her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. But for better or worse, her child would know its father. That had to count for something. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that her pregnancy announcement had just set off a chain of events that would shake the foundations of the Benison Empire and expose secrets that people would kill to keep hidden. The paternity test came back 2 weeks later, confirming what Vivian had known all along. Alexander Benison was the father of a child. She'd expected a phone call, maybe a meeting with lawyers. What she got instead was a hand-delivered letter on thick, expensive cardstock requesting her presence at Benison Industries that evening at 7 p.m. Something about the formality of it made her uneasy. She arrived at 6:55, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought for her mother's funeral years ago. Catherine, the receptionist, wasn't at her desk. Instead, A security guard she didn't recognize directed her to a private conference room on the 68th floor. When the door opened, Vivian's breath caught in her throat. Alexander was there, yes, but he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall and willowy, with platinum blonde haircut in a sleek bob, she wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Vivian's car. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. But it was her eyes, cold, calculating blue eyes, that made Vivian's stomach drop. "Vivian," Alexander said, standing. "Thank you for coming. This is Victoria Ashford, my fiancée." The word hit Vivian like a physical blow. Fiancée. He had a fiancée. Of course he did. Men like Alexander Benison didn't stay single. But he hadn't mentioned her. Not once, not that night, not in any of their conversations. "Please, sit down," Victoria said, her voice as smooth and cold as ice. She gestured to a chair across the table from them, a positioning that felt deliberately adversarial. Vivian sat slowly, her eyes darting between them. Alexander wouldn't meet her gaze. "I'm sure this is awkward for everyone," Victoria continued, as if they were discussing a minor business inconvenience rather than the explosive reality of Vivian's pregnancy. "But we are all adults here, and we need to handle this situation pragmatically." "Situation?" Vivian repeated, her voice sharper than intended. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. A complication. Alexander made a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. And now we need to deal with the consequences in a way that protects everyone involved." "Victoria," Alexander said, warning in his tone.
"No, Alexander."
"We discussed this." Victoria turned her attention back to Vivian, and in her gaze was pure calculation. "Here's what we are proposing. We'll set up a generous trust fund for the child. You'll receive monthly payments, enough to ensure comfortable living conditions and excellent education. In exchange, you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and accept certain restrictions." "Restrictions?" Vivian's hands clenched in her lap. Victoria slid a folder across the table. "No contact with the media. No public acknowledgement of paternity. No attempts to contact Alexander outside of scheduled, supervised visits. The child will be provided for financially, but there will be boundaries. Clear, enforceable boundaries." Vivian stared at the folder like it was a snake. "You want me to take money in exchange for essentially erasing my child's father from their life?" "Don't be dramatic," Victoria said dismissively. "The child will have a father. Alexander will fulfill his obligations. But let's be realistic about what this is. You're a janitor." "Cleaning staff coordinator," Vivian corrected automatically. "Whatever. The point is, our worlds don't mix. Alexander has responsibilities. To his company, to his family, to me. This child, while unexpected, doesn't change those responsibilities. We are trying to find a solution that works for everyone." "Everyone except the baby," Vivian said quietly. For the first time, Alexander spoke directly to her. "Vivian, please understand. This isn't about not wanting to be involved. It's about being realistic. My life is complicated. Victoria and I have been together for 3 years. We are getting married in 6 months. The merger between Benison Industries and Ashford International depends on our union. There are billions of dollars at stake, hundreds of jobs, multiple companies. One scandal could destroy everything. So I'm a scandal now." Vivian felt heat rising to her face. "Our child is a scandal." "That's not what I meant." "But it's what you said." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I came here because I thought you deserved to know about your child. I thought, despite everything, you were a good man who would want to be a father. But this..." She gestured at Victoria, at the folder, at the cold corporate setup of it all. "This is exactly why I almost didn't tell you." "Sit down," Victoria commanded. "We haven't finished." "Yes, we have." Vivian looked at Alexander, really looked at him, and saw not the man who had held her so tenderly that night, but a stranger. A wealthy, powerful stranger who saw her and their child as problems to be managed. I don't want your trust fund. I don't want your scheduled, supervised visits. And I sure as hell won't sign away my child's right to know their father. Be reasonable, Victoria said, her composure cracking slightly. Do you have any idea what you're walking away from? The kind of life we are offering your child. A life of shame and secrets. No, thank you. My child will be raised knowing they were wanted and loved, even if they weren't planned. That's worth more than all your money. Vivian turned toward the door, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed in front of them. Vivian, wait. Alexander's voice stopped her. When she turned back, he was standing, and for a moment, she saw conflict in his eyes, genuine turmoil. This isn't how I wanted this to go. Give me some time. Let me figure out. Figure out what, Alexander? How to have it all. The perfect fiancé, the business empire, and the secret child you can visit twice a year. Some things can't be fixed with money and clever arrangements. She took a breath, steadying herself. I'll raise this baby on my own. You can live your perfect life with your perfect fiancé. Just stay away from us. She walked out, and this time, no one stopped her. In the elevator, Vivian finally let the tears fall. She'd been so naive, thinking that Alexander would somehow rise to the occasion, that he'd choose to be different from every other wealthy man who'd ever gotten a woman pregnant and treated it like a PR problem. But as the elevator descended, taking her away from the gleaming heights of privilege and back to the ground where she belonged, Vivian made herself a promise. She would give her child everything she'd never had: stability, unconditional love, and the truth, even if that truth was painful. What Vivian didn't know was that Victoria Ashford was watching the elevator numbers descend, her jaw clenched in fury. That went well, Alexander said bitterly, sinking back into his chair. Victoria whirled on him. Do you have any idea what she could do to us? To the merger? My father will pull out if there's even a whiff of scandal. We are talking about a $20 billion deal, Alexander. $20 billion. I'm aware. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're having second thoughts. That little display of concern. Give me some time. What was that about? She's carrying my child, Victoria. Some basic human decency seems appropriate. Human decency? Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You slept with the cleaning girl, Alexander. You created this mess. Now we need to clean it up. How do you suggest we do that? She just walked away from a very generous offer. Victoria was silent for a moment, her mind clearly racing. Then she smiled, a smile that made Alexander's blood run cold. There are other ways to ensure people's cooperation, she said softly. Ways that don't require their consent. Victoria, what are you? Leave it to me, darling. You focus on the business. I'll handle our little problem. Alexander wanted to argue, wanted to demand to know what she meant by that. But part of him, the part that had built a billion-dollar empire through ruthless decisions and calculated risks, didn't want to know. Some problems were better left to others to solve, especially when your hands needed to stay clean. But as Victoria left the conference room, already pulling out her phone to make a call, Alexander felt a knot of dread forming in his stomach. He thought of Vivian's face, the hurt and betrayal in her eyes. He thought of the child growing inside her, his child, and he wondered if, in choosing his empire over his conscience, he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. 3 days after the disastrous meeting, Vivian was working her late shift at a different building, a medical complex downtown where she'd picked up extra hours. Money had always been tight, but with a baby on the way, every dollar mattered more than ever. The meeting with Alexander and Victoria had made one thing crystal clear. She was on her own. She was on her hands and knees, scrubbing a stubborn stain from the third-floor hallway when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Vivian Martinez? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yes. This is Cynthia Rogers from Benison Industries Legal Department. Mr. Benison wanted me to reach out regarding the matter we discussed earlier this week. Vivian's grip tightened on the phone. I made my position clear. I don't want anything from him. I understand your feelings, Ms. Martinez, but Mr. Benison is insistent that we arrange proper prenatal care for you. He's concerned that the clinic you mentioned might not provide the level of care you need. The clinic is fine. Please, just hear me out. There's a maternal fetal medicine specialist at Northwestern Memorial, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's the best in the city. Mr. Benison has arranged for you to see her, all expenses covered. No strings attached, no contracts to sign. Just proper medical care for you and the baby. Vivian wanted to refuse on principle, but she thought of the crowded clinic where she'd been waiting 3 hours for a 15-minute appointment, of the tired doctor who'd barely looked at her chart. She thought of her baby, who deserved the best care possible, even if accepting it felt like defeat. No strings, she asked warily. None. Dr. Chen's office will call you to schedule. That's all. After she hung up, Vivian sat back on her heels, exhaustion washing over her. Maybe she was being stubborn for no reason. If Alexander wanted to pay for better medical care, wasn't that the responsible thing to accept? It didn't mean she was signing away her rights or agreeing to his terms. It just meant her baby would be healthy. She was still wrestling with the decision when she finished her shift at 11 p.m. The building was empty, the parking garage eerily quiet. Her old Honda was parked on the 3rd level, and she was halfway there when she heard footsteps behind her. Vivian turned, but the garage was empty. Just shadows and the harsh fluorescent lights. She quickened her pace, her keys already in her hand. The footsteps came faster. She broke into a run, her heart hammering. Almost there, just a few more yards. The blow came from behind, striking her between the shoulder blades with enough force to send her sprawling forward. Her hands hit the concrete, her keys scattering. Pain exploded through her body as she tried to catch herself, protecting her stomach instinctively. Please, she gasped, rolling over to face her attacker. My wallet, take whatever you want. But the figure standing over her didn't grab for her purse. Instead, they just stood there, backlit by the garage light so Vivian couldn't make out features. Just a silhouette in dark clothes, watching her. This is a message, a man's voice said, distorted, like he was speaking through something. Stay away from Alexander Benison. Walk away. Forget about the baby's father. If you don't. He let the threat hang in the air. Then he was gone, footsteps echoing as he ran toward the stairwell. Vivian lay on the cold concrete, her whole body trembling. Her hands moved to her stomach, and she felt wetness there. When she looked down, her fingers came away red. She was bleeding. The next hours were a blur of ambulances, hospital lights, doctors speaking in urgent tones. Vivian could only focus on one thing, the heartbeat on the monitor. Her baby's heartbeat, fast and strong despite everything. Ms. Martinez, can you hear me? A doctor's face swam into focus, a kind woman with gray-streaked hair and gentle eyes.
I'm Dr. Patricia Gomez.
You're at Northwestern Memorial. You've had a placental abruption, a separation of the placenta from the uterine wall. Do you understand? Vivian nodded weakly, though terror was making it hard to process anything. We've stabilized you and the baby for now. The abruption was partial, which is good news. But you're going to need to be on strict bed rest for the remainder of your pregnancy. Any stress, any physical exertion could cause complete separation, and then we'd lose the baby. How long? Vivian whispered. You're at 14 weeks. Ideally, we need to get you to at least 32 weeks, preferably 37. That's potentially 5.5 more months of complete bed rest. The impossibility of it crashed over Vivian. I can't. I have to work. I have rent, bills. I understand this is difficult, Dr. Gomez said gently. But right now, your only job is keeping yourself and this baby alive. We'll connect you with social services, see what assistance programs you might qualify for. When the doctor left, Vivian stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. She'd been attacked, threatened, because of Alexander Benison. Someone didn't want her having this baby, or at least didn't want her making claims on its father. And now she couldn't work, couldn't pay her rent, couldn't do anything but lie in bed and hope her baby survived. She must have dozed off, because when she woke, there was someone sitting in the chair beside her bed. For a moment, her heart leapt, thinking it was Alexander. But it was a woman she didn't recognize, middle-aged, professional-looking, with a kind face. "I'm sorry to startle you," the woman said. "I'm Detective Laura Martinez, no relation," she added with a small smile. "I'm investigating your assault. Can you tell me what happened?" Vivian recounted the events, watching the detective take notes. "Did you get a look at your attacker?" "No. The lighting. He was backlit. I couldn't see his face." "But you said he mentioned Alexander Benison by name. What's your relationship with Mr. Benison?" Vivian hesitated. Once she said the words out loud to the police, there'd be no taking them back. This would become official, documented. But what choice did she have? "He's the father of my baby," she said quietly. Detective Martinez's pen paused mid-stroke. "The Alexander Benison? CEO of Benison Industries?" "Yes." "And does Mr. Benison know about the pregnancy?" "Yes. I told him 3 weeks ago. We had a meeting with him and his fiancée a few days ago. They wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and accept a trust fund in exchange for staying out of their lives." "And did you sign?" "No. I walked out." The detective was quiet for a moment, clearly processing. "Ms. Martinez, I have to ask, is there any possibility that Mr. Benison himself might be involved in this attack?" The question shocked Vivian. No, he wouldn't. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Would he? She barely knew him, really. One night of vulnerability didn't mean she understood what he was capable of. What about the fiancée? Victoria Ashford. Vivian thought of Victoria's cold eyes, her calculating expression, the way she'd called Vivian's baby a complication. "I don't know," she admitted. But she made it clear she saw me as a threat to her plans. "I'm going to need contact information for both of them. And Ms. Martinez, I need you to be very careful. If someone is willing to attack a pregnant woman, they're dangerous. Is there somewhere safe you can stay? Family, friends?" Vivian's mind raced through her limited options. Her mother was dead. She had no siblings. Her friends were mostly co-workers who she didn't know well enough to impose on. "I have an apartment, but..." "Someone knew where you'd be tonight. Knew which garage you parked in, which shift you worked. That suggests planning, surveillance. Your apartment might not be safe." Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through Vivian's exhaustion. She was alone, pregnant, injured, and now hunted. How had her life spiraled so completely out of control? As if reading her thoughts, Detective Martinez leaned forward. "We are going to figure this out, okay? I'm going to have a patrol car stationed outside your hospital room for now. And I'm going to have a very interesting conversation with Mr. Benison and Ms. Ashford." After the detective left, Vivian stared at the ceiling, one hand on her belly where her baby, miraculously, still lived. She'd tried to do the right thing. She tried to give her child the chance to know its father. And in return, she'd been threatened, attacked, and nearly killed. Maybe Alexander had been right to want to keep their worlds separate. His world was clearly more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. But as she drifted back into exhausted sleep, Vivian couldn't shake the memory of that night on the terrace, of Alexander's genuine smile, his warmth, his vulnerability. That man wouldn't hurt her. That man was real. The question was, which version of Alexander Benison was the truth? Alexander Benison was in the middle of a video conference with shareholders in Tokyo when his assistant knocked urgently on the door. He muted the call, annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, James." "There are 2 police detectives here, sir. They're insisting on speaking with you immediately. They said it's regarding an assault investigation." The blood drained from Alexander's face. "Send them in." and postponed the Tokyo call. Detectives Laura Martinez and her partner, a stern-looking man named Robert Chen, entered with the air of people who were used to intimidating powerful men. Alexander stood, offering his hand, but neither detective took it. "You're at 14 weeks. Ideally, we need to get you to at least 32 weeks, preferably 37. That's potentially 5.5 more months of complete bed rest." The impossibility of it crashed over Vivian. "I can't. I have to work. I have rent, bills." "I understand this is difficult," Dr. Gomez said gently. "But right now, your only job is keeping yourself and this baby alive. We'll connect you with social services, see what assistance programs you might qualify for." When the doctor left, Vivian stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. She'd been attacked, threatened, because of Alexander Benison. Someone didn't want her having this baby, or at least didn't want her making claims on its father. And now she couldn't work, couldn't pay her rent, couldn't do anything but lie in bed and hope her baby survived. She must have dozed off, because when she woke, there was someone sitting in the chair beside her bed. For a moment, her heart leapt, thinking it was Alexander. But it was a woman she didn't recognize, middle-aged, professional-looking, with a kind face. "I'm sorry to startle you," the woman said. "I'm Detective Laura Martinez, no relation," she added with a small smile. "I'm investigating your assault. Can you tell me what happened?" Vivian recounted the events, watching the detective take notes. "Did you get a look at your attacker?"
No.
"The lighting. He was backlit. I couldn't see his face." "But you said he mentioned Alexander Benison by name. What's your relationship with Mr. Benison?" Vivian hesitated. Once she said the words out loud to the police, there'd be no taking them back. This would become official, documented. But what choice did she have? "He's the father of my baby," she said quietly. Detective Martinez's pen paused mid-stroke. "The Alexander Benison, CEO of Benison Industries." "Yes." "And does Mr. Benison know about the pregnancy?" "Yes. I told him 3 weeks ago. We had a meeting with him and his fiancée a few days ago. They wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and accept a trust fund in exchange for staying out of their lives." "And did you sign?"
No.
I walked out." The detective was quiet for a moment, clearly processing. "Ms. Martinez, I have to ask, is there any possibility that Mr. Benison himself might be involved in this attack?" The question shocked Vivian.
No.
No, he wouldn't. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Would he? She barely knew him, really. One night of vulnerability didn't mean she understood what he was capable of. What about the fiancée?
Victoria Ashford.
Vivian thought of Victoria's cold eyes, her calculating expression, the way she'd called Vivian's baby a complication. "I don't know," she admitted. But she made it clear she saw me as a threat to her plans. "I'm going to need contact information for both of them. And Ms. Martinez, I need you to be very careful. If someone is willing to attack a pregnant woman, they're dangerous. Is there somewhere safe you can stay? Family, friends?" Vivian's mind raced through her limited options. Her mother was dead. She had no siblings. Her friends were mostly co-workers who she didn't know well enough to impose on. "I have an apartment, but..." Someone knew where you'd be tonight. Knew which garage you parked in, which shift you worked. That suggests planning, surveillance. Your apartment might not be safe. Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through Vivian's exhaustion. She was alone, pregnant, injured, and now hunted. How had her life spiraled so completely out of control? As if reading her thoughts, Detective Martinez leaned forward. "We are going to figure this out, okay? I'm going to have a patrol car stationed outside your hospital room for now. And I'm going to have a very interesting conversation with Mr. Benison and Ms. Ashford." After the detective left, Vivian stared at the ceiling, one hand on her belly where her baby, miraculously, still lived. She'd tried to do the right thing. She tried to give her child the chance to know its father. And in return, she'd been threatened, attacked, and nearly killed. Maybe Alexander had been right to want to keep their worlds separate. His world was clearly more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. But as she drifted back into exhausted sleep, Vivian couldn't shake the memory of that night on the terrace, of Alexander's genuine smile, his warmth, his vulnerability. That man wouldn't hurt her. That man was real. The question was, which version of Alexander Benison was the truth? Alexander Benison was in the middle of a video conference with shareholders in Tokyo when his assistant knocked urgently on the door. He muted the call, annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, James. There are 2 police detectives here, sir. They're insisting on speaking with you immediately. They said it's regarding an assault investigation." The blood drained from Alexander's face. "Send them in." And postponed the Tokyo call. Detectives Laura Martinez and her partner, a stern-looking man named Robert Chen, entered with the air of people who were used to intimidating powerful men. Alexander stood, offering his hand, but neither detective took it. "Mr. Benison, I'm Detective Martinez. This is Detective Chen. We need to ask you some questions about Vivian Martinez. Is she okay?" The question came out before Alexander could stop it, revealing more concern than was probably wise. "So you know Ms. Martinez?" Detective Chen asked, pulling out a notebook. "Yes. She's an acquaintance." "An acquaintance you got pregnant?" Detective Martinez said bluntly. Alexander felt heat rise to his face. "How is she? You said something about an assault." "Answer the question first, Mr. Benison. Is Ms. Martinez carrying your child?" "Yes." There was no point denying it now. The paternity was confirmed 2 weeks ago. "And how do you feel about that?" "How do I feel about it? What kind of question is that?" "The kind that matters when the woman carrying your child is attacked in a parking garage and told to stay away from you." The room tilted slightly. Alexander sank into his chair. She was attacked? Is the baby? They're both alive, though Ms. Martinez has been placed on complete bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Any additional stress or trauma could result in the loss of the child.
Jesus.
Alexander ran his hands through his hair, his mind racing. Who would? That's what we are here to determine. Where were you tonight between 10:30 and 11:30 p.m.? Here. Working. I've been in this office since 6 a.m. Can anyone verify that? My assistant was here until 9. After that, I was alone, but building security can confirm I never left. We'll check on that, Detective Chen said. Now, we understand you and Ms. Martinez had a meeting recently with your fiancée, Victoria Ashford. Can you tell us about that? Alexander hesitated. How much should he reveal? But Vivian had clearly already told them, and lying to the police seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. Victoria wanted to propose an arrangement, a trust fund for the child in exchange for Vivian's discretion. Vivian declined and left. How did Ms. Ashford react to that? She was displeased. Displeased enough to hire someone to threaten Ms. Martinez. What? No, Victoria wouldn't. But even as he said it, Alexander remembered Victoria's words after Vivian left. There are other ways to ensure people's cooperation. I need to speak with my attorney before I answer any more questions. The detectives exchanged glances. That's your right, of course. But let me be clear, Mr. Benison. A pregnant woman was assaulted and threatened. She was specifically told to stay away from you. Now, either you arranged this to intimidate her into silence, or someone close to you did. Either way, if we find evidence connecting you or Ms. Ashford to this crime, your wealth and power won't protect you. I didn't hurt Vivian, Alexander said firmly. I would never hurt her. Then prove it. Help us find who did. After the detectives left, Alexander sat in his office, his world crumbling around him. Vivian had been attacked. His child, their child, had nearly died. And the prime suspect, if he was honest with himself, was his own fiancée. He pulled out his phone and called Victoria. Darling, darling, how lovely to hear from you at this hour, Victoria answered, her voice honey-sweet. Is everything all right? Where are you? Alexander demanded. At home, of course. Where else would I be at midnight? Alexander, what's wrong? The police were just here. Vivian was attacked tonight. Someone told her to stay away from me. There was a pause, just a fraction too long. How terrible. Is she all right? She's in the hospital. On bed rest for the rest of her pregnancy. Victoria, did you have anything to do with this? Alexander, I'm shocked you would even ask me that. Her voice shifted, taking on a hurt quality that sounded rehearsed. I understand you're upset, but to accuse me of... You said there were other ways to ensure cooperation. 3 days ago, in the conference room, you said you'd handle our little problem. What did you mean by that? I meant I'd speak with my father about damage control strategies for the press if the story leaked. Nothing more sinister than public relations, darling. She sighed dramatically. You're clearly exhausted and emotional. Why don't you go home, get some sleep, and we'll talk about this in the morning? The police are going to want to question you. Then I'll cooperate fully. I have nothing to hide. Her voice hardened slightly. Unlike some people, I don't go around sleeping with the help and creating embarrassing situations. That's not fair. Isn't it? None of this would be happening if you'd kept your pants on, Alexander. But I've been willing to overlook your indiscretion to find a civilized solution. And now you're accusing me of assault? Perhaps you should look in the mirror before pointing fingers. She hung up. Alexander stared at his phone, doubt gnawing at him. Was he being paranoid? Victoria was calculating and cold, yes, but capable of hiring someone to attack a pregnant woman? Then again, $20 billion was at stake. The merger with Ashford International was the deal of a lifetime. People had done worse for less. He made a decision. Pulling up his contacts, he called his head of security, a former FBI agent named Marcus Webb who'd been protecting Benison executives for a decade. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Quietly. Victoria Ashford's movements over the past 72 hours. Phone records, credit cards, anything you can access without breaking the law. Sir, if this is about Ms. Martinez's assault, you should let the police. I need to know, Marcus, before the police find something that destroys everything. If Victoria is innocent, the investigation will clear her. But if she's not... He couldn't finish the thought. I'll see what I can find. But Mr. Benison, if she did this, protecting her protects no one, including you. I know. After hanging up, Alexander did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He went to the window of his office, looked out at the glittering city below, and prayed. He prayed that Vivian and the baby would be okay. He prayed that he hadn't been so blind that he'd built his life around a monster. And he prayed that he'd have the strength to do the right thing, whatever that turned out to be. Vivian woke to find an unfamiliar woman sitting in her hospital room. Not Detective Martinez this time. This woman was younger, maybe in her 30s, with warm brown skin and kind eyes. She was reading a magazine but looked up with a smile when she saw Vivian was awake. Good morning.
I'm Keisha Thompson.
I'm a social worker here at Northwestern. Dr. Gomez asked me to stop by. Vivian's heart sank. Social workers meant evaluations, meant questions about her ability to care for a child, meant the very real possibility of losing her baby to the system. I know what you're thinking, Keisha said gently. And that's not why I'm here. I'm here to help you figure out the next few months. You've been ordered on complete bed rest until delivery. That's going to require some support, financial, practical, emotional. Let's talk about options. Over the next hour, Keisha laid out various assistance programs, disability benefits, housing options. It was overwhelming and depressing in equal measure. Every option seemed to come with restrictions, waiting periods, bureaucratic nightmares. And none of it would kick in fast enough to save Vivian from missing rent payments that were due in a week. What about family? Keisha asked. Parents, siblings, anyone who could take you in. My mom died 4 years ago. Cancer. I'm an only child. My dad. Vivian's jaw tightened. He's not in the picture. Never has been. Friends. No one close enough to ask them to essentially become my caretaker for 5 months. Keisha made notes, her expression sympathetic. I'm going to be honest with you, Vivian. This is going to be hard. But women get through it. You'll get through it. We just need to get creative. As if on cue, there was a knock on the door. A different woman entered, this one older, elegant, carrying herself with the kind of quiet authority that came from years in positions of power. She wore a simple but expensive pantsuit, and her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Ms. Martinez?
I'm Eleanor Benezan.
Alexander's mother. The room went silent. Vivian exchanged glances with Keisha, who looked as surprised as Vivian felt. Eleanor Benison was a legend in Chicago social circles. Old money married to new money, she'd been a force in philanthropy and business since before Vivian was born. And now she was standing in Vivian's hospital room, looking at her with an expression that was hard to read. Could we have a moment? Eleanor asked Keisha politely but firmly. Keisha looked at Vivian, who nodded reluctantly. Once they were alone, Eleanor pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down with perfect posture. My son told me about the baby, she said without preamble. He also told me about the attack. I'm here because I need to understand something. Do you love my son? The directness of the question threw Vivian. I barely know him. That's not an answer. We spent one night together. One night. I don't know if that's enough time to fall in love with someone. But you felt something, Eleanor pressed. Something that made you want to tell him about the baby rather than disappearing. Something that made you walk into his office knowing he might reject you. What was it? Vivian thought back to that night on the terrace. He was real with me. Vulnerable. Not the CEO, just a man who was tired and lonely and human. I don't know if that's love, but it was connection. And I thought our child deserved a father who was capable of that kind of connection. Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then nodded as if Vivian had passed some kind of test. Victoria Ashford doesn't love my son. She loves his bank account, his name, the doors that marriage to him would open. I've known this from the beginning, and so has Alexander, though he won't admit it. Their relationship is a business arrangement dressed up as romance. Why are you telling me this? Because I believe my son made a mistake choosing Victoria over you. Or rather, choosing his company's future over his own happiness. And now you and my grandchild are paying the price for his cowardice. The bluntness was startling, but there was no cruelty in Eleanor's voice. Just hard truth. I can't undo what's been done, Eleanor continued. And I can't make my son suddenly grow a spine. But I can help you. I have resources, connections, money that's mine and not tied to Benison Industries. I want to help you through this pregnancy and ensure my grandchild has every advantage. I don't want charity, Vivian said, echoing what she'd told Alexander. It's not charity. It's family. That baby you're carrying is my grandchild, my first grandchild. Did you think I'd let you struggle alone out of pride? Mrs. Benison. Detective Laura Martinez sat across from Victoria Ashford in the woman's penthouse apartment, taking in the museum-quality art, the imported furniture, the view that probably cost more per month than Laura's annual salary. Victoria had insisted on meeting here rather than at the police station, and Laura had agreed. People were often more comfortable and more careless on their own turf. Thank you for seeing us, Ms. Ashford, Laura said as her partner, Robert Chen, pulled out his notebook. Of course. Anything to help with your investigation. Victoria was the picture of cooperation, dressed in casual but expensive athleisure, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that probably took 45 minutes to look that effortlessly perfect. Though I'm not sure what I can tell you about this unfortunate incident with Ms. Martinez. Let's start with your whereabouts last night between 10 and 11:30 p.m. I was here. Alone. I had dinner delivered around 8. You can check with the restaurant if you'd like. Then I watched some television and went to bed around 11. No one can verify that. I live alone, detective. My fiancé maintains his own residence until we are married. A slight edge crept into Victoria's voice. Am I actually a suspect in this assault? We are talking to everyone close to the situation, Robert said smoothly, including Mr. Benison, who we interviewed earlier. And what did Alexander say? That you were displeased when Ms. Martinez rejected your proposed arrangement. Can you elaborate on that? Victoria sighed, as if dealing with tedious children. Look, I'll be frank with you. Alexander made a mistake. We all make mistakes. I was trying to find a solution that protected everyone, Alexander's reputation, the company, and yes, Ms. Martinez and the child. She interpreted it as hostile, I suppose. But I assure you, there was no hostility intended. Tell us about the merger with Ashford International, Laura said, changing tack. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. What does that have to do with anything? Just providing context. It's a substantial deal, correct? Billions of dollars at stake. 20 billion, yes. It's been in the works for 2 years. My father and Alexander have been negotiating the terms. And the marriage between you and Mr. Benison, is that part of those terms? That's insulting, detective. I love Alexander. That wasn't the question. Victoria stood, pacing to the window. My father is old-fashioned. He believes in family legacies, in binding businesses through blood as well as contracts. The merger isn't contingent on our marriage, but yes, it certainly strengthens both families' commitment to making the partnership work. So if that marriage didn't happen, the merger might be at risk. I suppose it's possible, but that's hardly. And if it became public that Mr. Benison had impregnated a janitor and was preparing to acknowledge paternity, how might your father react to that? Victoria spun around, her composure cracking. My father would see it as a liability, as proof that Alexander lacks judgment and discretion. It could absolutely jeopardize the deal. Is that what you want to hear? That I have a financial motive to want Ms. Martinez to disappear? Fine, you've established that. But wanting something and doing something are very different things. Are they? Laura leaned forward. Because according to Mr. Benison, after Ms. Martinez left your meeting, you said you'd handle the problem. What did you mean by that? PR strategy, media management, legal options, not hiring a thug to attack a pregnant woman in a parking garage. Then you won't mind providing us access to your phone records, credit card statements, and email accounts for the past week. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. Actually, I do mind. Unless you have a warrant, detective, I think we are done here. We can get a warrant. Then get one. Until then, I think you should leave. Laura and Robert stood. At the door, Laura turned back. One more thing, Ms. Ashford. Do you know anyone who might want to harm Ms. Martinez? Anyone who might have taken it upon themselves to protect your interests without your knowledge? Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Fear, recognition, something, but it was gone almost immediately. No. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a yoga class. In the car, Robert turned to Laura. She's hiding something. Oh, absolutely. But did she order the hit herself, or did someone else do it thinking they were helping her? Either way, we need those records. I'll start the warrant paperwork. Laura nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Victoria Ashford was smart, educated, wealthy. If she'd hired someone to attack Vivian, she wouldn't have used her own phone or credit cards. She'd have been cleverer than that, which meant they needed to find a different angle. Alexander hadn't slept. After the police left, after his disturbing conversation with Victoria, he'd sat in his office watching the sun rise over Chicago and thinking about the choices that had led him here. He'd always told himself that he was building something bigger than himself. That Benison Industries wasn't just about profit. It was about innovation, about creating jobs, about pushing humanity forward. But somewhere along the way, the company had become more important than the people around it. More important than honesty, than integrity, than love. More important than Vivian and his child. His phone buzzed. Marcus Webb, his head of security. "I found something," Marcus said without preamble. "Victoria's phone records are clean, but I pulled security footage from her building. She had a visitor 2 nights before the assault. Guy arrived at 9 p.m., left at 10:30. Baseball cap, kept his head down. I ran facial recognition, got lucky, he popped in the system. Vincent Caruso, low-level enforcer with ties to organized crime. Mostly does collection work, intimidation, occasionally rougher stuff." Alexander felt his stomach drop. "You're certain?" "I'm sending you the footage now. There's more." Caruso's phone pinged at a cell tower near the medical complex garage at the time of the assault. "We can't prove Victoria hired him, but the timeline is damning."
Jesus.
Alexander's hands were shaking. "What do I do?" "You call your lawyer, then you call the police. If Victoria is behind this, you need to distance yourself immediately." "The merger." "Fuck the merger, Alex." Marcus rarely used his first name, and the profanity was even more unusual. A woman was attacked. Your child almost died. If you protect Victoria to save a business deal, you're not the man I thought you were. After hanging up, Alexander stared at the video Marcus had sent. There was no mistaking it. Vincent Caruso entering Victoria's building, staying long enough for a substantive conversation, then leaving. 2 days later, Vivian was attacked by someone she couldn't identify, who'd known exactly where she'd be. He should call his lawyer. Should call the police. Should do exactly what Marcus said. Instead, he called Victoria. "Alexander, how lovely to hear from you twice in one day," she answered, her voice carefully neutral. "We need to talk. In person. Now." "I'm at the gym." "Now, Victoria." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she agreed. "My place. 30 minutes." Alexander made it in 20, dismissing his driver so they'd be alone. Victoria answered the door in yoga pants and a sports bra, not a hair out of place despite her claim of exercising. "What's so urgent?" she asked, closing the door behind him. He pulled out his phone, showed her the security footage. "Explain this." Victoria watched the video, her expression unreadable. When it finished, she handed the phone back calmly. "That's Vincent Caruso. He does work for my father occasionally. He was delivering papers that required a signature. At 9 p.m. at night. My father keeps unusual hours. Papers that required an hour and a half to deliver. We also discussed a personal security matter. If you must know, I've been receiving threatening letters. Father wanted to ensure I was protected." "That's a lie." Alexander's voice was cold. 2 days after his visit, Vivian was attacked by someone who sounds like a professional, and Caruso's phone places him at the scene. "Then perhaps you should ask yourself why a man in my father's employ would attack your pregnant mistress," Victoria said, her calm finally cracking. "Maybe father sent him without my knowledge. Maybe he thought he was protecting the merger, protecting me. Did that occur to you?" It had, actually. Harrison Ashford was known to be ruthless, overprotective of his daughter. But Victoria's lack of surprise or outrage told Alexander everything he needed to know. "You knew," he said quietly. "If you didn't order it yourself, you knew your father would do something. You wanted me to think you'd handle it through PR and lawyers, but you knew he'd handle it his way. And you let it happen." "I didn't let anything happen. I can't control my father." "But you didn't stop him. You didn't warn Vivian, didn't alert the police, didn't do anything to prevent a pregnant woman from being attacked. She should have taken the money and disappeared." Victoria's composure finally shattered. "Do you have any idea what this pregnancy means? Not just to the merger, but to everything we've built? Your reputation, my reputation, our future? She's a nobody, Alexander. a cleaning woman who got lucky one night. And now she's ruining everything. She's carrying my child. A child you don't even want. You told me yourself. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. You regretted it. So why are you acting like this pregnancy is some sacred thing? Because I was lying to myself, Alexander said, and the truth of it settled over him like a weight. I was scared. Scared of what the baby meant, scared of being a father, scared of choosing responsibility over convenience. But you know what scares me more? Looking at you right now and realizing I almost married someone capable of this. Someone who sees a human life as disposable. You're being dramatic. The engagement is off. Victoria went very still. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Alexander, think about what you're doing. The merger. I don't care about the merger. Your company will lose billions. Your shareholders will revolt. You'll be throwing away everything you've built. Maybe it's time I built something worth having. He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket. He'd stopped wearing it weeks ago without consciously deciding to, and set it on her coffee table. I'm going to the police with this video. I'm going to tell them everything I know. I'd suggest you get a lawyer. If you do this, my father will bury you, Victoria said, her voice venomous. He has connections you can't imagine. Politicians, judges, journalists. He'll destroy you. He can try. And what about precious Vivian? You think she'll want you now? You think she'll forgive you for taking so long to do the right thing? You're a coward, Alexander. You've always been a coward. The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because they were partially true. But Alexander was done being ruled by fear.
Goodbye, Victoria.
He left, ignoring her shouted threats and accusations. In the elevator, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial his phone. Detective Martinez? This is Alexander Benison. I have evidence about Vivian's assault. Can we meet? The guest house on Eleanor Benison's estate was nicer than anywhere Vivian had ever lived. Hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, windows overlooking manicured gardens. Maria, the housekeeper, had filled the kitchen with groceries and prepared meals that just needed reheating. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand, plush towels in the bathroom, and a stack of books on the coffee table. It should have felt like paradise. Instead, Vivian felt like she was living in a gilded cage. You need to eat something, Maria said gently, bringing in a tray with soup and bread. She was a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense attitude of someone who'd spent decades managing wealthy people's lives. I'm not hungry. The baby is hungry. Come on, just a few bites. Vivian forced herself to eat, knowing Maria was right. Dr. Gomez had been clear. Proper nutrition was critical, especially now. But food tasted like ash in her mouth. She'd been in the guest house for 3 days, and the isolation was suffocating. She couldn't work, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything but lie in bed or on the couch and wait. Wait for her baby to grow, wait for danger to pass, wait for her life to make sense again. Eleanor visited daily, bringing books and conversation. She was surprisingly good company, sharp, funny, with stories from her years in Chicago society that ranged from hilarious to scandalous. But she never mentioned Alexander, and Vivian didn't ask. On the 4th day, there was a knock on the door. Maria answered, and Vivian heard a familiar voice that made her heart race. Is she here? Can I see her? Alexander. Vivian's first instinct was to hide, to tell Maria to send him away. But curiosity, and something deeper, something she didn't want to name, kept her silent. He appeared in the doorway of the living room, and Vivian's breath caught. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Nothing like the composed CEO who'd sat across from her in that conference room. Hi, he said, his voice uncertain.
Vivian Raplia Barili.
They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Alexander seemed to remember himself, crossing to the couch where she lay but stopping a respectful distance away. My mother told me you were staying here. I hope that's okay, that I came, I mean. It's her house. I can't really stop you. You could ask me to leave. Do you want me to?
No.
He ran a hand through his hair. Vivian, there's so much I need to say. I don't even know where to start. How about with why you're here? He took a breath. I broke things off with Victoria, called off the engagement, and I gave the police evidence that connects her father to your assault. Vivian sat up slowly, ignoring the twinge in her stomach. What? Victoria had a visitor 2 nights before you were attacked. Vincent Caruso. He's an enforcer, basically a criminal. My head of security found security footage. I confronted Victoria, and while she claims her father acted without her knowledge, I don't believe her. His voice was rough with emotion. Either she ordered the attack or she knew about it and let it happen. Either way, I can't. I couldn't be with someone capable of that. The merger is over. Harrison Ashford pulled out the moment I went to the police. I'm losing $20 billion and probably half my board. The stock will crash. There will be lawsuits. It's going to be ugly. Vivian didn't know what to say. She'd never asked him to do this, to sacrifice his empire for her. Why? She finally asked. Why throw it all away? Alexander moved closer, kneeling beside the couch so they were eye level. Because none of it matters if I lose myself in the process. Because that night on the terrace, you saw me, really saw me, in a way no one has in years. And I was so scared of what that meant, so scared of failing you or the baby or myself, that I ran. I chose the safe path, the business path. And look where it got us. Tears were streaming down Vivian's face. You really broke things off with her. Yes. And the merger is really dead. Completely. Your company will survive or it won't. I'll rebuild or I'll start over. But I'm done sacrificing people for profit. He reached out tentatively, and when she didn't pull away, took her hand. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I've done everything wrong. But if you'll let me, I want to try to do things right. I want to be there for you and the baby. Not as some distant benefactor, not with supervised visits and legal arrangements, but as a family. A family. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. I'm not asking you to marry me or love me or anything like that. I know I haven't earned that. But I want to be a real father to our child. And I want to get to know you, the real you, not just one night on a terrace. If you'll give me that chance. Vivian looked at this man, this powerful, wealthy man who just destroyed his own empire for her and their baby. She should be skeptical, should demand more proof of his sincerity. But she saw in his eyes the same vulnerability she'd seen that first night. And she saw something else, hope. Okay, she said finally. Okay. We can try. But Alexander, if you hurt me again, if you run again, that's it. I won't give you another chance. I understand. He squeezed her hand gently. Can I feel the baby? I know it's early, but... Vivian guided his hand to her stomach. There wasn't much to feel yet, just the slightest curve, but Alexander's face transformed with wonder. Our baby, he murmured. Our baby, she agreed. And for the first time since that night on the terrace, Vivian allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, things would work out after all. Continue next section next time. Please don't forget to click subscribe and comment where you are watching from.